All right. So it's just a little bit of English here. Intake or suction. Those are the ones that bring water in to your truck. Discharge, what else might they call that? Could call it a cross-lay or something like that because it's going to be hooked up as a permanent. But that's going to be a male threads to attach to your female because the male end points to the fire. So that's going to be for your attack lines, not your intake. So when we're talking about intake hoses, think of the stuff that's supplying the engine with water. That's an intake or a suction. All right, so soft sleeve hose. So that is the stuff that we have rolled up on the bottom shelf, 4, 5, 6 inch LDH. Connects a pumper to a pressurized water source, okay? Pressure, your hydrant will give it pressure so it won't collapse. But if you try to suck through it, it will collapse. It is not rigid, cannot be used for drafting. It's available in sizes from 2.5 to 6 inches, but if it's going to be a suction or an intake, it's 4, 5, or 6 LDH, typically. Hard suction hose, okay, the non-collapsible, okay, we got to fit them on our fire truck, and our fire truck's got to go, and you got to see out of windows, so it's going to be 10-foot sections. Designed for drafting from a static supply or connecting to a hydrant, okay? We used to connect to hydrants with those 10-foot pieces, but it's much simpler to do that with the soft sleeve hose. Constructed of rubberized reinforced material or heavy-duty corrugated plastic, available in size from 2.5 to 6 inches, but again, it's going to be 4, 5, and 6 for most of your supply line. So, soft, if you have a pressurized source, like a hydrant, and if you're going to be drafting, creating a suction, then you're going to need your hard suction, so it doesn't collapse. Yep. All right, are we good on the types of hoses? Attack versus supply, and construction. All right, let me find YouTube.
Hoses of the 1600s were made of leather, but these hoses were heavy, would crack when dry, and often break open under pressure. Modern firefighting began with a lightweight cotton fire hose, lined with rubber to keep the cotton dry and flexible. Fire hoses come in a range of sizes to fulfill a range of functions, from small lightweight ones for fighting forest fires to large heavy-duty hoses for industrial fires. Production begins with hundreds of bobbins of polyester yarn feeding automated looms a floor above. A series of spring rods keep the yarns under uniform tension. This is essential to create a tight weave. The factory programs each loom to weave specific patterns which incorporate identifier stripes. This is a visual guide to help workers assemble the fire hose later on. This woven fabric will form the fire hose's exterior, called the jacket. It's got to weather some nasty conditions, so they soak it in a plastic polymer solution with dye for color. The liquid encapsulates the fibers, making them durable and water resistant. At another station, they mix granules of polyurethane, a form of plastic, with white colorant and adhesive pellets. This mixture is for making the waterproof tubing that forms the inside of the fire hose. When they activate the adhesive in the mixture with heat, this tubing will bond to the hose jacket fabric. The mixer feeds the ingredients to an extruder, which melts the mixture and forms it into a hollow tube. The tube then passes through a basin of cool water to set the plastic. Next, the tube goes to the inspection table, where an automated printer prints code numbers on it for tracking purposes. To assemble the fire hose, they first pull jacket over a 30-meter long cable. Then with another cable, they feed a second untreated hose jacket inside the first one.
Double jacket.
Finally, they attach a cable to the third and innermost layer, the tube, and pull it along the entire length of the double jacket. Once it's all the way through, they trim both ends. The three layers, outer jacket, inner jacket, and tube, are now ready to become one. They begin the fusing process by clamping one end of the assembled hose to a steam nozzle. As the clamp holds the hose steady, the nozzle blasts pressurized steam into the tube. At the same time, it moves backward, pulling out any kinks. The hot steam melts the adhesive in the tube material and it penetrates the inner jacket around it. Once everything's perfectly straight, they pump in cold air to solidify the adhesive. This permanently bonds the layers. They roll up the finished hose into a coil, controlling the winder with a foot pedal. Then they lay the coiled hose on a table to install the couplings. Those are the components that attach the hose to the water supply on one end and to the spray nozzle on the other. They trim each end, then insert a brass expansion ring and an aluminum coupling on top. An expansion machine does the rest. They attach the end securely to the machine's protruding bar. Then the bar retracts and expands, pushing the brass ring outward. The force wedges the brass into the aluminum coupling permanently. This company tests every fire hose it produces under high water pressure on this table. After marking the type of hose with a stencil and indelible ink, they fill the hose with water. They check for holes and kinks and verify that the couplings stay in place. After the test, they drain the water. They insert a giant sponge to get rid of any water left behind. And now these new hoses are ready for their baptism by fire.
So, interesting short little clip on how a fire hose is made. So this is another section of hose that I'm going to pass around. I just brought one in. Has anyone ever seen a hose cabinet in the wall? You open it up and there's a arm that comes out, and then there's hose and a little plastic play spool nozzle on the end of it. Okay. Sometimes these are in stairs, hallways, things like that. They used to have fire brigades at large businesses. And so everybody here is working in a factory on a line, and it's like I'm taking applications for who wants to be on the fire brigade. You're going to get an hour away from the line once a month while we do some training. Okay, who wants to do that? And then, okay, so you 4 or 5 are going to be part of our fire brigade. We're going to show you where these hose cabinets are. We're going to show you how to use these nozzles. We're going to play with them outside on a nice day so you can see how they work. And you are going to get notified if there is an incident here of a fire. Everyone else leaves the building if there's a fire, but you, as part of a fire brigade, we want you to decide, can you go to our hose cabinets, pressurize the hose, and put water on that, and maybe put it out. Because a lot of these fires are going to be garbage fires, small fires, little things here and there, microwave or food in the oven or things like that. So that's what they're going to kind of want you to do, is put out those small ones, or at least contain it. Sometimes there was SCBA training involved, most times there wasn't. So you could go as close as you could get with just breathing the way you are. This is not double jacket, this is a single jacket. It's almost never used. And the other thing to remember is it's almost never tested. Okay, because such and such industry that we all work for, we're in the process of making stuff. That's how we make money, is by making things. So the fire is just an extra thing that our insurance company said we'll get a reduced rate if we have it. The building, when we built it, said we had to have those hose outlets. So it's kind of here because it has to be here, and we're going to kind of show a good faith effort that we do have some training, and they kind of know what they're doing on a small scale, and they might be helpful. So we have kind of moved away from that. We don't automatically put them in buildings now. There was not a standard on testing hose, so sometimes you would get them and they would fall apart and stuff like that. So you don't see them too much anymore. You don't see fire brigade stuff too much anymore. Pretty much going away, but you'll still see some out there. Our policy on those hose streams, cabinets. Did I get rid of Google? Is we don't use what's in them. Okay, like these. Not that one. All right. These look familiar? Everyone seen it before? Okay, and if you didn't, it's not that big of a deal. But let's pull up any one of them, like this one. How do I make that one bigger? Can I? Ooh, what? Lost a little bit. What the heck did I just do?
If you click on the photo, it might expand it a little bit more.
Do what?
Click on the photo.
All right. So that's what we need to see. So this piece over here is on a swivel. So if you open that cabinet, it will swivel out on that arm. That's like a curtain rod. Think of it, that red piece. Like a curtain rod. So we open this cabinet up, and this can swing out. Okay, little nozzle on the end. These are brass. They don't do brass anymore because brass has a high scrap value. So someone is going to steal it, and it's going to be there without a coupling. So what they did was they started making these little crappy play school nozzles. And I think I did see them up. They're still not too hard to find out in the world. Replace these with, because of the scrap value, is these plastic things. Okay, not a bail, not a pistol grip, just turn. And you can see that this will move in and out. So left to fog it out, right to straighten it out. Always remember left fog, right straight. Some people call London fog, left fog. Some people go right to fight, straight, whatever you want to remember. But that's what's typically on the end of it. So fire brigade members would take this line, stretch it out. One person would stay here, and that's just like the spigot on your garden hose at home. Open it up when they say they're ready, all the way, and then boom, they control it at the tip. That's a shut off as well. So turn it all the way to the left and it will shut off. We don't do that too much anymore. So our policy is if you ever find these, they are hooked up to a water source, and that valve is good. So what we do is we just disconnect right here. Okay, that's a standard coupling. disconnect that, and attach our hose to it. Our hose is tested once a year, and it is double jacket, rubber line, so we are going to use that. All right, and we'll get into more about how that's helpful to us as opposed to our truck next chapter. All right, so hose coupling, is that where we were? Yep, all right. So the hose couplings connect sections to form a continuous hose line, as long as you want. Again, if it's LDH, it's going to be 100-foot sections, typically. If it is a attack line, it is going to be 50-foot sections, typically. Guess, based on what we learned last year, guess what happens if you have a problem with a section of fire hose? It got run over, it might be damaged, it might be leaking. What have we said about every other chapter so far? Portelli? Report it to supervisor, who will report it to? Not yet. Not yet.
It's the person on the department who
The
is
person on
specialized.
your department that does hose. There's a person on your department for everything. Okay? They have extra training in ladders. They can fix some stuff. If not, they determine if it goes in or not. PPC, they determine if it needs to be fixed or not. Hose, axes, everything. You've got a person on your department. So if there's a problem, let your supervisor know. Okay, you will decide, because they've got more experience and stuff like that. Yep, okay, this one is got a problem. We're going to send it to so-and-so. We're going to report it up the channel, and we're going to replace that hose with another length or whatever you're going to do. But we send it to that person. Now, to make fire hose, like we saw in the video, do you think there's an NFPA standard on that?
Yeah.
There's an NFPA standard on everything. So yes, there is. A 50-foot length, they give you leeway, okay, of less than a foot, but it could be 49, it could be 51, somewhere in there. At some point in time on our Saturday practical, when we're throwing hoses and stuff, lay them out side by side, put both couplings against the wall, pull them out straight, and watch what happens. We're going to see a little bit of a difference. One might be 49, might be 51. Okay, so that's going to be fairly dramatic. Now, your hose person at your station can repair hose, just like they had that extruder, okay? So they can say this coupling has been run over by a truck and it's no longer useful. I'm going to cut 3 feet off of this hose and reattach another coupling to it. Now it's a 47-foot section of hose. So your department will have a policy on what hose can go in the hose bed and be considered a 50-foot section, and at what point you have to use it for something else. Typically, if it goes below a certain point, we could hook it up to the house line and write something on there with a permanent marker, not for truck use, or house line only, or something like that, or pitch it, or cut it in pieces and stick in that cabinet back there, which is what we have done, obviously. All right, so couplings. Connect sections to form a continuous hose line that connect the hoses to nozzles, hydrants, pumper connections, and FDCs. FDC stands for what? Fire Department Connection, more on those next chapter, but start to get used to the term. And then compatibility, designed and constructed through NFPA 1963. Threaded coupling must have national standard threads. So in history, you can look up some major fires we had throughout history. Probably the most notable one that said NFPA, get on board here. 1906, Baltimore was burning down. And they called for other cities. They said, come help us out. This is a huge fire. We need lots of people, lots of trucks, lots of hoses. And no one could play together because their threads and their hoses were different than this department, which is different than this department, which is different than this department. Everybody could take care of their own stuff, but we really didn't have people trying to help out other people and playing together. Use my truck and your hose. Use your truck and my hose. That was the first one that really came to light, was Baltimore, 1906. And they said that is a problem, we need to fix that. So NFPA jumped in and said we are going to go from 50 or 60 recognized hose couplings out there to, what makes the most sense? One. They didn't do that. But anyways, that should have happened. There's a few out there. So you'll see on your Livingston counties, you'll have a Howell compartment, you'll have a Brighton compartment, because even in Livingston County, we don't use the same connection. And it's not too unusual in Wayne County too. We used to have a compartment that was the people who use the other threads. So National Standard Thread or Detroit Standard Thread are the two most common ones that are used out there. So we called it the aw shit compartment. So if you're ever at a mutual aid in another community and you try to hook your hose up to theirs and it just won't go, the first thing you usually say, oh shit, okay. Well, then you go to your aw shit compartment, because then you got all your different compatibility pieces. The ones that go from one thread to another, the adapters. So everyone's got that compartment or box or section or something where you can connect to outside people, because we still don't have a uniform one size. 1.5 doesn't always mean 1.5. There's National Standard Thread, there's Detroit Standard. So there's still about 7 threads that are commonly used. Some jurisdictions do not use National Standard Threads. When connecting hydrants to apparatus in those jurisdictions as part of mutual aid, hose adapters may be needed to complete the connection. So that is that compartment. All right. So they're going to call our couplings, is what we're talking about now, either threaded or non-threaded. Okay, so we could also call them storts for the non-threaded, or sexless, because there's not a traditional male-female, or not. So that was the third term that I was trying to come up with and I couldn't. So, threaded. You have a distinct, like sextant or telly, you have those two ends. Male and female, yep, so two different ends of the same hose cut somewhere in the middle. So very distinct. One has to connect to the other. You can't attach a male to a male or a female to a female without an adapter of some type. Okay? Non-threaded, that is not the case. Non-threaded, there is not a male and female and right, wrong, threaded, unthreaded, whatever you want to call it. They are exactly the same. Okay? They have those little bumps on them, and then they have those little ridges. Okay? So your bump that sticks out, and then your ridge that goes in. So this guy goes next to him over there. The bump goes into the ridge, etc., same thing here. And then you do a quarter turn, push together in that way. Okay, I've got this end, you've got that end. Push together and turn. And you will hear a click, a very distinct click. We did that on a practical day. Everybody remember that? Okay, so we're going to pull those out again on Saturday. And we'll play with those again. So, things to think about. Neither of these will, okay, I guess let me reword it. They will both swivel. Okay, so you don't have to twist the hose, twist the coupling. Okay, the male end is one piece. Okay, it is a shank. Okay, the female end is two parts. It is the shank down here.